My name is Lucas Brown, and I'm on the Vancouver Startup Week team. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are grateful to be virtually gathered on the Indigenous land, regardless of where you're joining us from. I am grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. First, I'd like to thank you for joining us for VSW 2021, and welcome to today's session titled Unforgettable Brand, Tell a Braver Story with the Power of Archetypes, hosted by Alyssa Burt from Brave Narrative. This session is part of the VSW Growth Track and is proudly supported, this is part of the Founder Track and is proudly supported by Sage Accounting. Sage knows you didn't start your business to become an accountant. Very sorry to any accountants out there. Sage Accounting keeps your business organized and running smoothly. Track your cash flow, send out invoices, and get paid quickly. With Sage Accounting, you can visit the booth and access free guides and templates for starting your business finances the right way. Plus, get an exclusive VSW discount if you're ready to switch from Excel. During the session, if you have any questions for our speaker, please post them in the Q&A in the HOVA session. You can also upvote questions. Now, I'd like to pass over the mic to Alyssa Burt from Brave Narrative, and we'll begin.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to dive in today. And in the poll I had up, I got a little bit of information from you guys on what it is that you're hoping to get or learn from this workshop. And some of the main things were around really aligning your content with your market so that you can get more of the right followers, more of the right opportunities, and better monetize your brand so that you leave that impact that you're here to leave. So this is a little bit strange because I can't see your faces, but we'll just move forward best we can. So I want to just start by asking you guys, what are you most struggling with in your brand and messaging? You can enter into the Q&A or into the chat, I believe. And I don't know how I view that.
Yeah, there's a Q&A session in HOVA, and people will be able to enter their questions. And then at the end, we can have a Q&A session, and I can help read them out and give you the opportunity to answer them.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, just go ahead and enter that in. And first off, I just want to talk about what is a brand. According to Wikipedia, a brand is a name, a term, a design, a symbol, or a feature, something that identifies one seller's good as distinct from that of another. So you see this picture here, you've got the Chex is distinct from the Cheerios. You can tell which brand you're buying and where to basically trace back, if you like a product, how to find it again. And it's a little bit deeper than that though, especially nowadays with more personal branding and startup brands. Essentially, a brand is defined more these days by what it's not. Marty Neumeier, who's an author and speaker in all things brand, says a brand is not a logo, a brand is not an identity, a brand is not a product. He goes on to say that a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And so if a brand, like as branding and advertising has evolved, brands have really become more subjective and more about the perception and accumulated meaning. So if a brand is so intangible, how can we manage the perception and meaning of our brand? That's where storytelling comes in. And so as part of the storytelling framework that I use, I also work with a wheel of archetypes. And what are archetypes? Archetypes are essentially a recognizable pattern or character. You think of like a character in a storybook, like the hero in Indiana Jones, or an explorer, or a mother, or your next door neighbor, like a next door neighbor type. These kinds of archetypes are basically they have distinct characteristics that transcend language and cultural differences. So whether you're watching a show in Japanese or in English, you still have these kinds of characters that that you can recognize and understand even if you don't speak the language. And so, like a logo, archetypes help us differentiate one thing from another, but it's more in the intangible realm. It's more in the invisible realm of meaning. And some of this work goes back as far as Plato and the cave of shadows, and Carl Jung, who was a psychologist who worked a lot with the collective unconscious. And more recently, Margaret Mark and Carol S. Pearson, who wrote this book called The Hero and the Outlaw, Building Extraordinary Brands Through the Power of Archetypes in 2001. And so they were from the collective areas of psychology and advertising and brought it together to look at it in terms of brands. And so I want to give you guys a couple examples. Basically, archetypal branding, as I do it with my clients, is a look at the underlying patterns of story and character that you're living out through your work in the world. Now, whether you're here to get personal branding in your career and your profession, or organizational branding for your startup, essentially you can track the patterns through the stories or through the vision and values of your brand to really surface what are my archetypes. So I want to start by showing you guys a couple examples of some brands that I've worked with and done some design for, so you can see a little bit about what this looks like. So first off, this is a client of mine who's from Vancouver, and she's an entertainment professional and a radio host, and basically her tagline, her business is called Trying to Be Good, and her tagline is entertainment for the places that hurt. Her top three archetypes are the rebel, the jester, and the lover. And so you can kind of see just through the glitter on her teeth, there's like a little bit of shock to the image. A lot of her work is meant to provoke and to disrupt, and it's very much connected to her role as a jester. She loves entertaining and making fun of the horror of being alive, so she called it. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to love and belonging for her. And so it's not a rebel without a cause. She's deeply motivated to support people for greater self-acceptance and self-love. Another example is this client who is from Nairobi in Africa, in Kenya, and she works with all kinds of businesses from the United Way to, United Nations to Teachers of the Congo and Women Against Violent Extremism. And she was a client of mine, and her top three archetypes are the magician, the sage, and explorer. So you can see a little bit in her twinkle in her eye. She's got that magician kind of sparkle, and really the magician is about shifts in perception, and she really leads that work through her clients by bringing work that she calls life lenses. It helps people understand the lens that they see through to help facilitate teamwork and better communication with her clients. Then she's a sage, so she's an instructional designer, and she helps people develop workshops and instructional training for their employees and for their clients. And so the magician sage really combine beautifully to have this sort of magical, transformative experience through learning and teaching and understanding. And finally, her third archetype is the explorer. And you can see just from this photo shoot that we did that she's, I mean, even just the fact that she lives in Nairobi, like she's a very globally minded person. She's lived in 80 different countries. Her clients are from all over the world. You know, we've got the globe in here and the picture of the elephant from Africa. And then you can see other parts of her brand come to life in the stage, the teacher desk and the little apple with the books and the rulers. And so, yeah, you can kind of see how that starts to come to life. Finally, we've got another magician brand, and this woman runs an organization in an island in the Caribbean in Mexico. And um, and so her transformation is all about inner perceptions and inner shifts through yoga and through pain management. She helps people with migraines and chronic pain to find natural healing methods. And so her top three archetypes are the magician, the innocent, which is also called the purist, and the everyman or every woman. So the magician is again about that transformation. The purist or the innocent is really about that sort of minimalist, very bringing down to the essence, sometimes a little bit childlike or naive, or even just really connected to simpler times in the past. Um, and then the everyman or every woman is also called the realist or the next door neighbor. And this archetype is very much about belonging and connection and inclusion. And so she's originally from Russia, and which is a socialist country, and everything that she does is very community based, including the yoga studio that she runs in Cozumel. And the purist is all about just simplifying everything. So she really helps people get to the essence of who they are, and in the yoga work that she does. Her brand is called Quiet Transformation, so it's got this real combination of the magician and innocent. So I want to also just jump in here and say, in terms of my philosophy, I really believe that your difference matters tremendously. Who you are in the world and how you stand out makes all the difference. And archetypes point to our identities and help us see our character, our values, our vision, what we do, and the stories we live out in the world. And even if you have a team of you that are founding a company, this is often our startups take on a life of their own and take on a character and personality of their own. Originally, like for many years in advertising, you think of, say, the Jolly Green Giant or the Michelin Man. Brands would create characters that people could then attach or relate to, attach meaning to, and it's the same as in our current world. Even if your brand doesn't have a cartoon character or like a cute character like that, your brand itself has a character, has a personality, and that can really be revealed more clearly through archetypes. So our goal here is alignment. So we've got an inner identity, something that we're just doing, our day-to-day experience, how we lead our teams, how we interface with our clients. And then we have our reputation, basically how we're perceived. And we want to create alignment between the two. We want to create a content market fit, which is what one person reflected to me in the poll I had. Instead of product market fit, how can we really align our message, our brand, our visuals to how we're actually perceived? And obviously, there's only so much that you can control in how people perceive you. And there's a lot that you can do to really make an impact in that. And so our character becomes our brand personality, our values become the brand values, our vision becomes our North Star, or kind of the key phrase that helps us align everything that we're doing. And what we do aligns with how other people experience us, and the stories that we live out become the stories we tell. So compelling stories are the tellings of characters that are undergoing some kind of transformation. Often, a good story is always a chronicle of transformation, and so is business, leadership, and art. And I would further that to say that a good story usually encompasses the protagonist having some kind of conflict with the greater story world. And so what would that look like in terms of a brand? So if you think of Nike, for instance, the conflict that Nike has with the world might be around complacency or laziness, or the sense that, like, I can't do it. And so their tagline, "Just do it," is a call to action to overcome that story world where we might not believe in ourselves fully or might not get into action. And a more responsible brand like Patagonia is really in conflict with the greater story world, or the greater overculture of over consumerism and unsustainable business practices. And so their tagline is all about creating the best quality products, but also saving the planet while doing that. And so that conflict is key to how you can really crystallize the story that you're telling in the world. And so story also connects us to our audience more deeply. And there's so much neuroscience behind this. It's incredible when you start to tell a story. They've hooked up people's brain neurons and scanned basically what's happening in two different people's brains as one person tells a story and another person listens, and the same areas of the brain are lighting up. And so as I'm telling a story, you're going to visualize, especially when you're using concrete visuals like a lemon or or like say a pink elephant, like you're going to visualize it. That part of your brain is going to light up. And so that's a really powerful tip to know. And then using concrete examples like that is a really powerful storytelling tool. So when you are telling a story, how can you ground it in concrete details? And that's sort of where I get to with a story as world making. And so what do I mean by that? It's not just a written or an oral story. Story isn't just, the funny joke I tell about the time I had an embarrassing story or something like that. It's really story as a film set, or as the design on my website, or as every touch point I have with my customer or stakeholders, my investors, my employees. Every decision in your business tells a story. Every interaction tells a story. And you know this as a consumer. When you work with a brand and something doesn't go well, you get a less, you think of that brand in a lower capacity. But when a brand really goes the extra mile and does something exceptional, that tells a story as well, and you're more likely to feel excited about it. So this is me, and my brand is called Brave Narrative. My name's Alyssa Burt, in case I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. And basically, I've been running my business for 6 years, and my top archetypes are the heroine, the visionary, and the creator. And so you can see the kind of heroine part comes to play in the brave aspect of what I do. And it's deeply a part of my philosophy and my own life experience that being who you are, standing in your difference, being creative and innovative in your business is really risky. It takes a lot of courage. And so I work with my clients a lot on not only brand and marketing strategies, but also on mindset and really flexing the muscle of courage to launch something new. As startup founders, we're really comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty, and that's a real superpower. And the visionary, which is a subset of the magician, is also about transformation. So I support my clients to really transform and shift their identity from maybe an entrepreneur, someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, to a successful entrepreneur, or from someone who maybe is unclear about their brand story, or not really sure, confident in how they tell that, to someone who is confident. And finally, the creator, because it's all about creating a brand, creating a story, creating a strategy, creating a business. And I support my clients to do that. So I would love to invite you to take a few minutes and do this quick exercise, which I call what, how, why. So the first is the what, which is, what is it that you do? What are the tangible jobs to be done in your business? What are the things that you do in your career, if you're doing more personal branding? So, and I love using congruent statements, which are 2 words, an I statement plus a present tense verb. So if you've got a pen and paper, I invite you just to actually do this right now and write out, okay, what are the things that I tangibly do? It might be for me, it would be I consult, or I research, or I coach, or I creative direct, or things like that. So what would it be for you? I'll give you a minute just to work on that. Okay, let's move to the next one. So next is the how, which is really about your unique values and strengths, what sets you apart. So, um, so say you are a grocery service. So you might be your to do might be something around providing food um, or supporting people to be nourished. And how you do it might be through sustainable practices like Nada grocery, or through delivery, or through unique. What are the unique values and strengths that really set you apart? So I'll give you another minute to work on that. Okay, then finally, let's look at the why. So, why is it that you do what you do? What is the purpose, the cause, or belief that drives your business? Often this can be very personal, and you can literally, like what I'll do with my clients, is ask them, what are the peak moments and the lowest moments in your life or career? And that can help us really uncover, okay, what is the why behind what it is that you do? Um, and this is the most powerful part because it can really help us connect to our clients and our customers and our stakeholders in deeper ways. And if you're a professional brand, if you're looking to do it for your career, this can be part of your LinkedIn strategy. You can talk about this when you're trying to get a new, interview for a new job. Really, this is what elevates our brand from the transactional to the visionary. We connect over deeper meaning and deeper values. So I'll give you one more minute to work on that. And I'm seeing the chat in Huva now, so if you want to add it there, you're welcome to. Okay, so once you've got those 3 things written down, next we're going to look at your archetypes. This is the fun part. So this is the archetype wheel that I use with all my clients. And basically there are 2 main axes that we have all 12 archetypes sort of go around the wheel across these 2 axes. So the first is independence versus belonging. You see independence in the top right-hand side, where you've got the purist, the sage, and the explorer, and belonging in the bottom left, where we've got the everyman, the jester, and the lover. And so independence versus belonging is one of the polarities, and the other is stability versus risk. So the stability folks are the nurturers, the rulers, and the creators that create structure through the world for the world. And the risk side is the heroes, the heroines, the magicians, and the rebels that really create. They disrupt and they transform and they attain mastery and they overcome obstacles and they just have a lot more of that risk taking. So each archetype kind of falls somewhere on this spectrum. So we've got the explorer, for instance, that's very independence seeking, but they're a little more on the risk taking side of things than the purist or the innocent, which is more stability and safety seeking. And so what I want you to do is looking at these 12 archetypes, which are the big black words on the outside here, identify the ones that most resonate for you. So you can just do this intuitively without necessarily even knowing a whole lot about them. As part of this process, I'm happy to share, I've got a free gift for you guys, which is a brand PDF guide for each of these archetypes that you can download and look at, as well as your strategies and what kind of audience that you have. And so if you have a look at this, just identify your top 3 archetypes and feel free to put them in the chat in Huba. It'd be very helpful if you throw it in the chat, then I can speak to some of them more. Instead of just lecturing to you guys, I can actually respond to what you've got. So I don't know. Let me know if people are having trouble with the chat. Okay, cool. So we've got the Magician, the Jester, and the Sage from Nikita. And we've got the Nurturer, the Sage, the Lover from Tanya. And Camilla said we've done a quiz on these as a team and landed on Royalty, Magician, Creator, and Everyman. So Royalty would be the same as Ruler. And then we've got Nurturer, Sage, Everyman. This is so awesome. Okay, so let's take a quick look. So we've got 3 Sages. Why don't we jump to Sage? See if I can find it. Oops. Okay, sorry. Sage is the teacher. So if you've got Sage as one of your top 3 archetypes, you're likely someone who's going to be very into learning, teaching, and understanding the world, and kind of a lifelong learner. And so the person I've got here is Chris Doe, who is a designer and Emmy award-winning designer, director, CEO, and chief strategist of Blind and the founder of Future, which is an online education platform with a mission of teaching 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love. And so that's pretty kind of straightforward one. I've talked a lot about the Magician, which is all about transformation. Sometimes it's intuitive. Sometimes the Magician is you've got Steve Jobs here. Sometimes it's more technical. You think of Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. We've got the Nurturer, which is all about caring and giving. Often therapists are nurturers, or food brands can be nurturers. Food brands can also be lovers when it's more about sensuality, and you think of like going to a nice Italian restaurant with your romantic date. But the nurturer is more around care and protection for others, and nurture brands often really are incredible at customer service. And we've got the Jester. Let's see. The Jester is all about building connection and really like it's belonging through laughter. And so there's all the signs that shows that we learn better, we retain information better when we can laugh about things and have jokes. And what else do we have here? We've got the Lover is really like the sensualist, the friend. This woman here is Serena Reese, who's a businesswoman, a fashion designer, and owner of Coco Maya, and the founder of Agent Provocateur. So she's a Lover brand. And Lover can be really obvious, like someone like her who does lingerie and chocolate, but it can also be less obvious. There's a woman from Vancouver named Danielle Laporte, who's a very Magician Lover brand. And so, she isn't overtly sensual, but her main message is we need each other. And she often has things that are very heart-centered, and she's got a lot of visualizations and meditations, so very Magician, intuitive vibes. But then she pairs that really nicely with a Lover. And you've got the Rose here. You got just like a lot of this kind of very personal feel to her work. So that kind of shows you how some of those can play together. I'm curious if you guys have any questions. Well, I'll talk a bit about the realist too, which is a fun one. So the realist is also called the everyman or the neighbor, the regular guy or gal. And this one's all about belonging, to be accepted and to really connect with others. And it's really like this ordinary, down to earth, solid, virtuous, unpretentious. It's not super flashy. You think Brene Brown or, IKEA or the Gap. It tends to be a little bit more humble and honest and practical, and often quite social justice minded too. A lot of these people really get irked when there is a power over dynamic. So when you've got this brand or this archetype in your brand, it it can be it can really inform your pricing to being more accessible, or having a tiered pricing that allows you to be more accessible to everyone. If you're a personal brand and you're trying to do your professional branding for your career and you're not a company, the realist is often just known for being really reliable, and so that can be something you highlight in your resume or on your LinkedIn. Things like that. So let me know in the chat if you have any questions about these. The ruler is the king, queen, commander, leader, boss. This archetype is all about creating a prosperous, successful family or community. They're super badass at controlling chaos and getting things in order. And often luxury brands are ruler brands. And so you think Cadillac or Jaguar, Ralph Lauren. And so often their pricing will be high or it will be more exclusive. And so I'm just curious, like, how is this resonating for you guys? Is this connecting any dots for you? So what I want to say is just like when you're working on your brand, how do you connect the dots between what archetypes you have and say the visuals you do, or the pricing strategy, or your copy on your website? How do you connect something like I was showing in one of my earlier slides with say someone who's got a magician stage, like how do you make that come to life?
Alyssa, I do have one question in the chat that relates to what you're talking about here. Just a question saying, can you explain the relationship between the colors and the archetypes?
Oh, like the colors I'm choosing in the wheel?
I believe that's it. Yeah, they're asking the relationship between the colors and the archetypes. So I'm not sure if it's the color chosen or on the wheel, I imagine. Yeah.
Honestly, mostly it's just a visual design element, but there is an element of like the pink for lover and the purple for magician. There's definitely some that kind of align better than others, but I was also going for a bit of a rainbow, so I designed the visuals myself. So there's nothing really deeply meaningful about that. But if you are looking to find a color palette for your brand, if you've got a magician brand, for instance, sometimes purples can invoke that more mystery aspect, but there's a lot of things. There's so many ways that you can bring this to life. That's the challenge with this stuff, is that you've got this sort of invisible way of saying, okay, yeah, I'm a jester brand, but what does that look like? There's so many great jester brands, from Nicki Minaj, who's very colorful, to Old Spice that does a lot of humor, to like even MailChimp that has the monkey. It can be playful. And so think, okay, well, what visuals are playful, or what language or voice is more humorous? Or if you're a sage, like how can I teach? How can I really convey a sense of authority and maybe be a bit more bookish or philosophical? So The archetypes can be a really profound thing to share with a designer, with a copywriter in your team. It can really help to shape the creative direction and the messaging. But in the end, it's very unique. And often I look to the pairing of archetypes because it sort of adds that nice tension. And so, the Explorer brand, for instance, can be anything from the North Face that's super outdoorsy to something more globally minded and eclectic, like Kelly Wersler here who's pictured here. She's an interior designer who works with all kinds of eclectic traditions from different eras and different design styles and puts them all together. And so she's very much the kind of person who embodies this kind of archetype. So you could be either, super outdoorsy or more like Amelia Earhart or like Indiana Jones, or you could be more like more globally minded in other ways, like Starbucks, which is around the world, or Amazon A to Z. You can find anything from A to Z. So the final part of this work that I want to do is I want to introduce you to the brand story framework that I do with my clients. So essentially, once you're clear about your archetypes, your vision, your values, all of the superpowers that make you you, the next thing we can do is look to your audience. And your audience is usually a reflection of your archetypes. And so your audience will, at one point, like not only, or it may go two ways, right? So they might either have the same archetypes and just deeply resonate with what it is that you're doing, or they might be lacking those archetypes and need a brand or a professional who can manage that for them. So in the case of the ruler, like I might be looking for an accountant who's a ruler brand that can just manage my chaos if I'm more of a creative. But if that accountant, so an accountant might be a creative brand, in which case maybe they work exclusively with right brain audience, like artists and creative entrepreneurs, to help them from a more right brain perspective and translate the sort of numbers stuff to make it easier for them. So I don't know if I conveyed that very well, but basically your audience, when you're looking to who your niche is, usually they either reflect your archetypes and have very deep resonance with that, or they're lacking that and really craving that. And so the customer journey that we map together really looks at the desired experiences across four main areas: the functional, the emotional, the identity, and meaning. And when I did my MBA in the design thinking program at the California College of the Arts in San Francisco, one of my professors did all this research with a major research company where they looked at the meanings that drove consumer behavior. Over 100,000 people were interviewed. It was an extensive survey. And he has this book called Making Meaning. That basically breaks down what customers are looking for across these four sections. So the functional is a tangible. It's like, what job do they need to get done? What do they want to do or have as a result of your business? Now, if you're a professional brand and you're trying to get hired, this is a little bit different. So like, what is the functional job role? What are the responsibilities? So that's one thing to map, is just like, okay, what does my client, or what is the company that's hiring me most want to get done? The second is emotional. So how do they want to feel? And so this is really like, if you're trying to get hired by a company, they probably want to feel relieved that you're taking over and handling something in their business. But this can also be very much connected to the brand archetypes. So on my website, I've got this secret page that you guys can access if I can figure out where to share it. I think I can put it in the chat. Yay, there you go. Okay, so you can go to each of these archetypes and see, let's go to the sage because a bunch of you had sage. So this gives you a lot about yourself, but then when you scroll down on the second page, you've got your key strategies as well as your audience. And so the sage audience really desires a sense of empowerment through knowledge. They often have a massive Kindle library and subscribe to countless podcasts and e-journals, or they just have an appetite for knowledge and learning that is reputable. And so they seek out trusted experts, and they don't want to be told what to think. And so this can help when you know your own archetypes. You can dive more deeply, just intuitively through that lens of that storytelling lens into like what it is that your ideal clients are most likely going to want. And they're most likely going to fear being duped, misled, or being taken for a ride in terms of false information. They don't want to be wrong about trusting a source. And so it's really important to get it right when you're providing teaching or information as a sage brand. Often they have a hunger for knowledge, but it's met by overwhelm or how to find a reputable source and sift through the millions of results in Google search in today's information age. So when you're looking at the emotional, the sage might want to feel excited or inspired by the information that you're teaching. And so that's one example of how that can come to life. Then finally, the identity piece, or thirdly, the identity piece, which is all about who they want to become. And so who your clients want to become, this can be huge. It can be anything from a consultant supporting a solopreneur to become the CEO, or it could be, I did in my venture project for my MBA, we created a sustainable grocery brand that helped them become the kind of person that was a champion, a values-aligned champion of the environment in their daily and weekly grocery shopping. And so they were able to become the kind of person that practices zero waste, for instance. And so that's another thing to really identify, like, okay, who is it that my clients want to become? And then finally, we've got the meaning, which I can also send this link in the chat in Huva. But basically, this is the work that my professor did, where he interviewed 100,000 individuals worldwide and came up with these 15 core meanings that underlie what people most want. And so anything from accomplishment to beauty to community, what are the core meanings that drive the buying decisions of your ideal clients or customers? And so this is where we kind of elevate again the brand to the more visionary, to the greater sense of aspirational values, and things like justice or harmony. Like, we've got this like deeper sense of freedom, and these can feel really lofty, but if you think about it, brands we use every single day support us with this stuff. So Google helps us with enlightenment, helps us get clear understanding as a sage brand to find the information we want. Lego is all about creation, and they help us produce something new and original. Same with Nikon or a makeup brand like Mac Makeup. They help us create something new. There's other brands that are all about community. I think Vancouver Startup Week has a big part of that, just because they help bring the startup community together in Vancouver. So you can really unpack these 15 meanings and identify the kind of top 3 that are really connected to what your ideal client is most looking for. And then you can do the same for obstacles. So what gets in the way of those desired experiences, and really name them. And that can be the pain points, that can be the things they're struggling with. And if you're a professional brand, what are the things that your company is most struggling with? What are they really, and it can be harder as a professional brand to feel like you're making an impact, especially if it's a bigger organization that you're trying to get hired by. But honestly, like when you stand in your difference and when you own your superpowers, you'd be amazed by the difference you can make. And what is the ultimate difference? What is that legacy you want to leave? What is the mark that you want to make? So once you've outlined those main things, who your ideal customer is, the obstacles that they face, and what their desired experiences are, we really can position them as the hero of the story so that we then become the guide. And that's where this key insight piece comes in. So the key insight piece is really like, what is your key aha? What is the core message that you have for your clients that underlies every transformation that they experience through your brand? And so, again, we look at Nike, just do it. Like that's, like just get into action. Like that's all it takes to overcome complacency and laziness, which might be the obstacles to get to the functional experience of being athletic and fit and feeling good in your body, to the emotional experience of feeling inspired and motivated and energized, to the identity of becoming maybe an athlete or someone who trains on the regular, and the meaning, which I think for Nike would probably be something around accomplishment and maybe I think accomplishment is the biggest one, maybe redemption, a little bit of like atonement or from past failure or decline. Because we've all been there. But yeah, just that sense of like accomplishment and getting over those obstacles. Nike's such a hero brand, right? And that's the hero archetype is all about mastery and overcoming obstacles and being courageous and getting into action. So, and then the core brand message essentially becomes the tagline. And so what's the difference between the key insight and the core brand message? Often with my clients, we'll work on the key insight as like a multi-phrase, like it could be like 5 or 6 different sentences that really meet your clients and your customers where they are right now to where they most want to go. And so that looks like, okay, right now my client is, say you're Nike, let's just pretend. So your client is on the couch, they're eating potato chips, they're feeling lazy, they're feeling complacent, they're feeling apathetic. And maybe the reframe is, it doesn't take a lot of, like it's just one step at a time. Maybe that's your key reframe. One step at a time, one small habit, one small decision, put down the chip bag, maybe get up off the couch, just go for a walk today. Maybe tomorrow you'll go for a walk around 3 blocks instead of just 2, and just keep building that up. And so the key insight can help us really meet our clients where they are instead of blasting them with our idealism right off, like to empathize and to really empathize with where they are right now. That helps us to then walk them step by step to where they most want to get to. The core brand message becomes a tagline, which is sort of the essential insight, or usually we pull out one of the aspects from the key insight work we do as the core brand message, and sometimes we refine it further. But yeah, that can really help us to nail, okay, what is that message that we can then express across all our marketing. So I want to quickly address the questions we've gotten here in the Q&A. So,
yeah, if you want, I can read those out for you and give you the opportunity to respond.
Great, thank you.
Okay, awesome. And just before we get into the questions list, I think we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left. Yep. Are you going to be okay if we share the video session today on YouTube?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So why don't we dive right into the questions then, just given the time, and I'll encourage anyone with questions to go in and add any additional ones. The first question we have is, what's your advice if we are struggling with finding a message that resonates with all segments of our target market?
Yeah, so when you've got different segments, that can be an added challenge, absolutely. And basically, there tend to be through lines. I always look for what are the threads that are in common amongst the differences, right? And so this can happen if you've got, say, an investor segment versus a customer segment. I've got a colleague and a friend who I did my MBA with, and she works with everyday founders to help them build businesses through her incubator and foundry program. And but at the end of the day, her website is targeted towards investors because they're the ones with the money. And so even though the people that she works with more on a day-to-day basis are the actual founders, the website is targeted and speaking to that experience of the investor. And so that's one question I would ask you is like, who is the most essential segment? Where does most of the money come from? That can help guide that process and really looking at, okay, what is that customer journey for that particular customer segment? But then map it for all of your segments. Like really look across all the different stakeholders and ask those questions that I pointed out in that last slide. Like who are they? What are the obstacles and what are their desired experiences? And then that way you can see, okay, what are the common threads? And usually there'll be something with your archetypes that brings it all together. And so even if you've got, like a client, like I'll just give the example of like my friend who's got the Mother Superior project in San Francisco. So she's a venture and social purpose foundry, and her archetypes are probably the creator and the realist because she's very much into everyday founders, people who are outside of the typical venture and capital access. She often works with people of color and women and people who just have a different kind of experience than the typical venture capitalist. And so she's definitely got the realist brand, but then she also works with investors who care about that. She works with investors who share those values, and she's not going to probably attract investors who don't share those values. So there's an element of alignment that happens, and I believe in a founder-centric approach. So if you are showing up as your whole self with your values really crystal clear and knowing who it is that you are, then yeah, that might change the kinds of people you attract. But if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're going to end up being no one to no one. That's kind of marketing 101. So take a stand, be bold, stake a claim in who you are and what you're about. And you're more likely going to have clarity around that. Even if they're very different segments, you should be able to find some thread, some vision, some meaning, especially the meaning aspect that will unite them.
Awesome, thanks. And we've got one last question in the queue here. How to best create a brand messaging testing strategy when looking to solidify your brand voice?
Yeah, so this is great. And if any of you know the design thinking method, I mean, a creative iteration cycle and getting feedback and market research, like literally talk to your people. Find, 5 to 8 people that match your target segment and ask them. Like show them your homepage, show them your pitch deck, show them your copy, and just ask like, okay, what do you get from this? What do you think? Really, and there's A/B testing on all kinds of lead magnet or like different lead pages or different opt-in like services. A lot of these kinds of websites have A/B testing where you can try different approaches, but ultimately, like, yeah, I mean, even Instagram, social media, LinkedIn, you can look at the analytics. You can look at the analytics in Google Analytics for your website. You can see, okay, where are they clicking? What are they liking? What is most popular? Instagram or LinkedIn can be some of the most powerful ways to really test a market strategy or a message. I'm always experimenting on my Instagram where I'll share a message and maybe it didn't get that many likes. So I'm guessing that angle or that sort of message didn't quite land. But then I did this other one and it really just stood out. A client of mine that I can demonstrate this for she's a naturopathic doctor in Portland, Oregon. And so she's got this business that she's building that is all about managing grief and integrative solutions for chronic illness. And, one of her most, like, you can put your mouse over it and you can just see, okay, the short 420 guide for cannabis and mental health got 229 likes, whereas a lot of her other other posts only got 60. And so you can kind of see, okay, obviously my clients really like that, and maybe there's some elements to that really make sense. And yeah, and her archetypes are the heroine, the nurturer, and the realist. And so for her, like, a lot of the best messages that she has that really tend to resonate are ones that really build deep empathy with her clients. And so she had one where she was sharing about, at her mom's funeral, nobody was talking about how nice her abs were. Here it is. So this one, things nobody mentioned at my mom's funeral: her weight, her abs, how much money she made, her house, things like that. And this one got 400 likes, right? And so you can really see, oh, that message really resonated. And if we unpack that, that's got a huge nurturer brand. That's got a huge sense of the realist. She's very pragmatic. She's very empathetic. And that's how you bring a brand to life. That's how you get that message across. That's how you really resonate and create that alignment and that resonance with the people that you're here for. So I hope that helps. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm www.bravenarrative.com. You've got the link to my my brand wheel where you can download the PDF guides. And yeah, I'd be happy to meet you guys throughout the next few days of the Vancouver Startup Week, and hopefully in person next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. And I think we're out of time, so I'd just like to thank Alyssa for her amazing presentation. A lot of great takeaways for our attendees today. As well, I'd like to thank the attendees for joining the session.